Hi, and welcome back to Rose Connections. My name is Janet Rose, and every week I walk us through various topics of how we can change our perspective, gain new insights so that we become better heart-centered leaders and create a more loving and sustainable and trauma-informed world. And one of those topics that I usually talk about is radical reflections. Radical reflections, I always call climbing your own mountain. So imagine the mountain behind me here. And in the course of climbing that mountain, in the course of taking that personal retreat into yourself and understanding yourself, you uncover hidden treasures, things that you forgot about, things that were swept away in an avalanche caused by the triggers, traumas, and dramas that we have had in our lives. And in particular today, I want to focus on that, on being able to see your accomplishments. Because I think one of the hardest things for heart-centered leaders, we are always wanting to lift everyone up, but we often don't feel like we're worthy of being lifted up as well. That actually is part of what contributes to our high rates of burnout. We expend all of this empathy for everyone else. We celebrate the successes of our teams and our clients, our families and our partners. But how often do we allow ourselves to celebrate us and what we've done and what we've accomplished? And in fact, I think there's so many of us, myself included, I definitely struggle with this, who think that it's bad for us to celebrate our accomplishments. I'll tell you what has shifted for me. I'll tell you a little story about how I started in working on trauma-informed care, how I got my start with this. Actually very literally 6 years ago today, or this week, I started doing work as a disability attorney. I was trained in the SOAR methodology. SOAR stands for SSI, SSDI, Outreach, Access, and Recovery. So those are the two disability benefits. This is a application methodology that we use that is specifically useful for folks who have had severe substance abuse issues or who are experiencing homelessness. And in working with that methodology, in being placed in a human services unit where I'm going to be screening applicants and doing applications for folks who have had not only severe disabilities, but are living in severe poverty. In doing that work, there is so much of that work that I can say was entirely due to the clients. It was the client's trust in me. It was the client's ability to recall information, to show up on time. They had to do more than their fair share to make those successes happen. But I did have successes. And those successes weren't just my clients. I couldn't say it was only them, that they were the only reasons that I was successful, because I was successful as well. I was the only one stationed at that particular county. So it's not like I had other staff, interns, anyone else doing my work for me. I was the one there at 7 o'clock at night scanning things into the computer to send over to Social Security. And in those successes and recognizing my role in those successes, that shifted everything for me. Because just a few years before that, as I was looking at getting back into the workforce after 5 years as a mediator in private practice, as I am dealing with active trauma and a lot of re-traumatization, I remember a career counselor sitting down with me and, okay, so let's list off your accomplishments. And I froze. I didn't know what to say. it felt like everything, like all the bills that I had passed in the legislature weren't me. That was our coalition. That was, our partner, in the House. And that's, the Senate sponsor and all of these other things. I couldn't really say that those things were me. And that didn't feel right to own that if I wasn't 100%, or the majority, involved in that. And yet those were my accomplishments too. But at that time, because of the trauma, because of all the expectations that had been set off, causing these avalanches of shame and guilt and unworthiness and undeservingness, I buried all of the things, all of the treasures that I had made. These were the things that I created with my own hands. And so in that moment, when we were reaching the end of a grant, as many nonprofit employees and human services employees will be able to relate to, as we were reaching the end of a grant and we were trying to figure out what are we going to do next, the very next thing I did after telling them that I wanted to stay was I asked for a raise, because I had a list of cases that I had helped win. Yes, it was my clients who won those cases, but it was me that helped organize the cases, that helped keep them on track, that did the follow-up with Social Security, that served as the shield between Social Security and my clients. And that role mattered. That was probably the first time in my career that I can point to something and say, oh my God, that was me. There was no one to share credit with. I accomplished those things. I met my goals. I did these things and I got a raise. And with that raise, we created a brand new program to replace the one that had gone away and expanded it so that we offered more eligibility to come in front of me and help and have me work with you on your case. It was a very magical time in my life, and one that I replicated, when that agency closed and I ended up moving to another agency. But if I hadn't had that moment where something was poking through and shining and reminding me that, oh my God, I actually did do this. This whole beautiful thing was me on some level. And that's something to be savored. That one thing shifted my perspective in such a profound way that is how I got to be where I am. This is how I got to be on this trauma-informed path, because really, very literally, those successes were entirely because I had integrated trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, harm reduction techniques, all of these things into what ordinarily is a highly bureaucratic, highly dispersonal process. I integrated heart-centered leadership principles to see my clients for who they really are, to offer them safety, for them to tell me their story. And I feel like a steward of their story. I feel so honored and humbled that they trusted me enough to share themselves with me in such deeply personal ways. Because let me tell you, doing a function report, you're asking a lot of personal questions, and you're asking for a lot of deep information that people normally don't share even with their loved ones. And that accomplishment of being able to steward those cases through this very difficult process, that was the first time in my career I had really felt proud of myself. I had been proud of the jobs that I had held, or the people that I had worked with, or the coalitions that I was a part of, but I had never taken credit for any of those. And even now, as it's coming out of my mouth, like the visceral reaction I want to say is, no, it really was the clients. It was all of them. And it was true on so much, but they have also continually reminded me over the years that what really made the difference was being able to know that they were accepted. And that wasn't the process. That was the synergy between me and the client. And so one thing I really want to encourage us to do, and that I'm going to challenge us to do, is something that I've actually been doing over the last quarter. Ever since the beginning of January, I've been doing this, other than a few hiccups here and there. I've been listing my accomplishments. Every week, I have a little to-do list that I create. So I have an agenda, I have, all of my professional to-dos, and I have all my personal to-dos. And you see a lot of them that aren't done. But I also have something here, over here, with accomplishments and lessons learned. And so every week, as I'm going through my to-do list, as I'm creating what I need to do for the week, I'm also logging the things that I accomplished during the week. On my daily to-do list, I have a column that is just for accomplishments. And so those accomplishments can be things that are tangible, like I won a case today, or, I entered 280 names into the database today. These are great tangible things for you to celebrate. But there's a lot of intangible things that happen that actually take a lot of courage and effort and energy for us to be able to do. For example, with financial things, I'm kind of like, la, 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 la. I would rather not deal with it. I would rather just not deal with it. And there's some financial trauma in there for me as well. And that's part of it, is this avoidance mechanism of, if I don't have to see it, it doesn't exist and it won't be so scary. Yay. And so doing something like talking to a financial advisor, or calling an accountant, or working on my taxes. Oh my God, working on my dad's taxes, after his death, all of these things spark that anxiety for me, and that avoidance mechanism. I want to keep myself safe from this big scary sea monster, which is kind of what I envision when I'm looking at financial, information in general. It's just this big sea monster that's out to get me. And is that rational? Of course not. Is that my trauma reaction? Of course it is. And so one of my accomplishments last week was, not only did I make a call to a financial advisor and actually stayed on the phone with them, and am actually filling out a check today to contribute to my IRA, which is something that I have had difficulty overcoming. But I also got these taxes done. I got, my quarterly report done for myself, for my estimated taxes. Like, all of it was just hallelujah. I did something big. And so that accomplishment went on the same list as the fact that we did a massive clean out of all of our DVDs last weekend, which has been on our list of things to do for years now. And we finally did it. We finally pulled that Band-Aid off, and it's done. And that's an accomplishment that sits alongside, sometimes I showered today is an accomplishment, and that should be celebrated as well. And some of this might sound silly, of, celebrating getting showered every day. But if you've been struggling with depression, that is a massive, massive win. So celebrate that. Allow yourself to replenish your light. Because so often in these videos, I am helping people conceptualize how to deal with very difficult topics. How to deal with embedded racism. How to deal with latent trauma. But too often we ignore that celebration, that golden opportunity for us to replenish our light. Because in order to look into those dark corners and really make a difference for ourselves, of stripping away that which everyone else has placed on us and that isn't authentic to us, as we strip that away, we become more vulnerable. And that vulnerability is made worse when we don't feel good about ourselves, or even a channel of good about ourselves. And so listing out your accomplishments like this, going through and sharing for yourself those things that made you proud during the week, those things that made you relieved during the week, those things that were really, really difficult and took everything you had to just pick up that phone and call and make that dentist appointment. Because that's my next challenge. It will be a dentist appointment. Then we are able to rise up as we are lifting others up. We have the energy to look into those dark corners and face those monsters of our past. We have the replenishment that we need to offer to others whose lights are fading under the weight of systemic racism, for example, or who have faced multiple losses. As we shine bright for these folks, these are the folks we want to serve. We need to allow ourselves to be replenished by even one small thing like listing out our accomplishments. Recognizing that as you do the math, oh my God, I hit so many of my goals this year already. As you look at, I scanned all of my family photos. Who does that? That's awesome, Janet. You understand that there is more to you. There is more value to you than what others have told you, than what has been buried under all that shame and guilt. You have things to be proud of. And the more that you celebrate these lists, these things, this is everything that I accomplished in my first quarter. As you celebrate those things, you start melting away and blowing away all of the things that have buried your other treasures, your hidden talents, your passions, your memories, your joys. And that ultimately is what it's all about, is us recovering ourselves and becoming who we really are and shining brightly as much as we can. Because otherwise, what message are we sending to those that we want to serve? When we've been through trauma, when we've been through hardship, when we don't accept our own accomplishments, we're telling our clients that you can only hope to remain small. We're telling our families and our kids, you can only hope to feel this big about yourself. And instead, we need to be examples of how freeing love can be, and especially when we savor our own. So thank you so much. I know this video ran longer. I try to keep them under 20 minutes. Let's just agree that I'm just going to keep them under 20 minutes. So today I actually went live with my Trauma Informed Care 101 class. This is just an intro class. This is a 90-minute class. I'm going to be offering it on Zoom online on May 12th. So save the date at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. And so I'm going to be teaching about just basically layperson's trauma-informed care. So if you've never heard of it before, if you've been hearing about trauma, you want to understand more about it, you want to know how you can make a difference with folks who have had trauma, or how you can set better boundaries for the folks who are encountering your trauma, then this is the class for you. And I'm going to keep it nice and affordable. I believe it's only $10. But I will also have some freebies that I'm going to share. So follow me on Instagram. Follow Rose Connections on Instagram. I'm going to have some ways for you to enter for a free class and a free consultation. So thank you so much. And I really look forward to our next time together, because it's going to be a relationship reboot, and it's going to be all about the tower and applying the tower to relationships. Take care, and I will see you soon.